Well, it certainly is a nice, chilly fall morning here in southern Indiana. The leaves haven't quite completely turned yet, but that's okay. Oh yeah, and welcome back to the Hoosier Garage. Again, I'm Adam. I'm the originator of all this, I guess. Saturday morning, and I have been really hassling myself with what to do with this fan. It's starting to get cold, like I just said. You get warm days, you know, October here in the Midwest, you can get really warm, hot days, or you can get really cool days. And so we've obviously been in the middle of all this body work, and this is epoxy primer. And epoxy primer does a good job of sealing, but with our muriatic acid treatment that we've done on a lot of portions of this thing, that's gonna need sealed after so long. So we could do several different things. We could actually put a sealer primer on it. We could work it out and paint it, but there's certain avenues you got to really look at. We dug out a lot of the sealer that comes up here, and when I say sealer, I mean like the butyl, or not the butyl, but the urethane sealers that they put up in these corners to keep moisture from going into the seams, that kind of sealer. We've got that, and you know, you want to be able to deal with that. We got dings here, there, and everywhere, although both of these doors were not acid treated, so they could actually be left to set. So I did decide on that. The roof is where I came to my conclusion. One, you want to work your way from the top down, like when you're in the shower, you know, start with your head and go down, right? And so we'll probably do the top, but there's a little patch here that needs to occur. So we're going to do a little welding right there, because I was sanding on it the other day and it was actually very thin. So I would have cut a square out, had it a shape that fitted perfectly. So I got two magnets holding it on. So we're going to weld that in. We're going to do go through these gutters, make sure that any rust that has reappeared or was already there, we're going to go ahead and handle that. We're going to re-epoxy the roof after we clear everything, and then go from there. Maybe we get a warm day this week, or even today. Let's just say today it happens to get warm and we are popping on that schedule. Then I will go ahead and whip out some red paint and we will paint the roof. At least get a seal coat on it. I'm going to get some wrap, and when I say wrap, basically some plastic paint sheeting, and we're going to put it all the way around the van from this down. And we're going to cover everything, keep stuff from getting to the inside of the van so we don't have weather strip on it, and just seal and just do the roof, okay? And then work our way down later. So we're going to go get some supplies. I'm going to get a new paint mask. I'm going to get some of that sheeting. I've got to get some rust gel, not muriatic this time. I want to get the rust gel. Hopefully they have it, the Rust-Oleum, the squirt style. And you just remind me if I forget any of that. So, I've spent all day on this roof again. Now, you might remember, if you follow along with our videos, we did this roof several months ago, and I'll just put the video up here in the description. It's part of a series of the epoxy primer. And I was running short on epoxy primer and rust encapsulator that weekend. So I kind of went into Band-Aid mode and covered what I could and went through it that way. We did not fill the drip rails, and yeah, pretty much left it at that. And over the past few months, some of that, I guess you could call it hastiness, but really it was just lack of materials and wanting to try to get everything cornered there. It allowed some of the rust to just poke through in areas, and when I say that, it's just very light surface rust, and that's
like if you imagine spraying something but kind of incomplete, that incomplete area is what rusted. So I went through and sanded it down, did some 80 grit, then just jumped over to 180 grit, smoothed it out that way, feathered everything out. I went over it and just put rust encapsulator over the entire roof. Now there's two key areas that we're not really worried about, and that's the one being the vent. There's a vent right up here in the middle of the roof. It's about yay big. Originally had a vent cover that went over it. We're probably going to trim that out and probably put maybe another smaller low profile vent on it, or a small sunroof. I'm just kind of on the fence about what I want to do there. And speaking of sunroof up in the front, we're thinking of doing one in the traditional location between the two front passenger and driver seat. So those areas I didn't really detail as far as cleaning out because they're probably going to get cut. What I got now, it's like 8 o'clock, something like that, at night. And I have primer sitting here, and it is activating right now. I have the activator in it, and a little bit of reducer, and the epoxy primer itself. So we're going to re-epoxy the roof, so that'll kind of double protect it, so to speak. Had all of it covered, and I got to about 97%, and I ran out. I actually thought when I was mixing it that I gave myself too much, so I went ahead and mixed, about yay much. I'll give it a good second coat, and I'll be all right. I'll finish what we got here. Anytime you mix up anything that's got like a catalyst or an activator, even if you stir it up good, don't shoot it right away. You need to give it a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes at least, to let it kind of just work together and get it chemically mix up, and then you spray it. I've done it before, but before you put anything in your cup, just put a little bit of reducer or lacquer thin or whatever it is you're thinning with in the bottom. That way, if your product is too thick, it'll break it up a little bit and it won't immediately gum your gun up. So I always put just a little bit down in there, and that way when it introduces all the thick stuff like the activator down in there, because I don't usually have mixed cups, so I can't mix it separately and then pour it in there, and you may not either. If you do, awesome. Sometimes I think to get cups and stuff, and you mix it then pour it in. If you don't, just remember that little tip. Now this has those ribs also on top, so when you're spraying from this side, you might get this part of the inner wall of the rib and the floor, but you might not get this side. So make sure you jump around on both sides and look all the way down the stretch, especially if you're doing one of these vans where they're just endless miles of real estate that you're trying to cover. Okay, so I just used up whatever I had left, and I just cleaned the gun. Now, I got a different gun. Whoops. I got a different gun here. The Husky had a plastic or a plenum type of body on it, and I was cleaning it out, and one of the inside pieces by just casually putting it in, and it stripped out. The gunk was building up in it pretty good, and I had to keep cleaning it out, and it seemed like it was building up and hardening a lot more. So I think there was probably some leakage in it. So I went ahead and just put it away. I typically keep them around for parts because sometimes the tips, you get different sizes and stuff like that. This one here, if some of you might be familiar with it due to the color, this is actually a Harbor Freight gun. These work really, really good. My only advice on them is just to, when you first get them, they have like an oil through them where it keeps everything moving good. So run you a little bit of reducer through them first, kind of like, you know, when you, before you go paint or prime anything, run a little reducer. Well, run, you know, maybe a half a cup full of reducer through it and shake it up as you go. Shoot it some, turn it sideways. That gets it all through there and takes that and blows it all out. That way you don't get fish eyes in your paint, because I'm sure some people probably put their primer in there first, just right off the bat, and you might have some junk in it, you know, there's some dust or even some metal shavings in some cases, or just the oil, and then they get either crap in it or they get like fish eye in their paint job, and they're like, whoa, this gun ain't no good. So I thought, well, 15 bucks. I got one again. We just sprayed that primer on. You can adjust the fan on it real easy with this little deal. And when I first got it, it was shooting a round pattern, and all I did was back it off a little bit, and I had a nice oval pattern. Now, if you're not familiar with your spray patterns, if it's real heavy on the ends, then you're probably got too much pressure. You back it off. But this one, you can almost adjust everything there. Anything else could be through here, but I'm not going to touch that one. Get you a regulator, put it on there. That way you can control your pressure at the gun, but it's also good to control it at the machine too. So I'm going to clean up these tips a little bit, and we'll be good. We can use this for some paint later. Okay guys, it's another day, and we're working on the Fast and Firm sealer, like the caulk gun sealer, you know, on the drip rail of the van. So I started this side and worked my way around. So you'll see right here, and it is certainly Fast and Firm. I give it a few minutes and it sets up to like a skin on it. And I've done pretty much half of it all the way down to here. Now it's a little messy. It's not like certain caulks that you'd buy at the hardware store where you can, you know, just, you know, spit on your finger and, you know, really control it. This has a certain stickiness to it that allows it to do this, and we'll have to try to remove that later. I've been taking a little bit of reducer, and you can get a nice slide out of it. See, that kind of drags out, but it's set up a little bit, so we'll have to probably sand that down when it dries and knock off all these little edges. Now I'm going to go through the other side, but to give you a good look at the rail first, you know, you'll want to cover this in, or at least lop it over to where nothing will go up inside of this seam and back, so you can kind of take it down like that. I'm not filling it to the top. You don't want to do that anyways. You just want to put like a little skin down in there, because this is where the roof seam mounts into the side of the van, and you can kind of see the spot welds through here, and here is the actual edge. Well, that's when we was spraying it with the encapsulator and then the primer. That was what we wanted to make sure to really cover that seam. I'm going to start on this other side here. I'm going to move the ladder over. And I started back here in the middle, right here, and we're going to just meld into that one and drag it around. These corners are probably a little harder because they need a little bit more material. The width is kind of wide. So we'll start back on this side, work our way up there, and hopefully we have enough. We'll see. $40-something for one of those tubes. It's a bit much, and this is a lot of drip rail to fill. Normally on the cars you'll have a quarter of it. You know, you almost pretty much just have this side, not including the back. You'd have like one side, and then the other side of the car would be about this much here. So quite a bit of real estate on this one. And just take your time with it. Don't put too much on, but too little, because when you go to spread it, it'll want to kind of it'll shorten up on you on the sides and you have to go through and fill it. And I had to do that a few places. So it's a little tricky to work with. So I'm gonna get to that side and then we will jump in and tell you or show you what that looks like. And hopefully we'll do a little bit of body work. I can't remember how long this takes to dry. It does say don't put it on bare metal, so we are right there as far as putting an epoxy primer on it first. So it is a little cool. We'll give it an hour and see if it's sandable. If it is, we'll be in really good shape. And we can touch up our areas. Stuff like these little marks here, that's from the edge of the... It's still a little bit soft from last night, so almost 24 hours ago. But like I said, it's a little cool out, so. All right, so after a few days of letting that primer dry, partially my fault, I put a little too much on it. Like I was trying to use what I had left in the cup because I mixed too much. I went ahead and tried to spread it around on there and it was really just too much. And then the following 3 days was cold and damp outside. And while it was in the garage, it was a little less damp in here. It was still cold. So it actually took a few days to dry. So that one's on me. Our Fast and Firm has dried, and you don't have to use Fast and Firm because it does have a rubbery kind of a finish on it. So you could use filler. Typically on a car, you could use fiberglass filler. And that stuff that I would say would be the Napa Pro Strand. It's not the hairy stuff, but it looks like green Bondo. Okay, you can use that, and I'm not talking about Rage either. But if you use the fiberglass on this, say on the Duster, we'll use that because it's a smaller area. It's not as doesn't go around, you know, the full length of the van and around the other side. That's good to use on that. Don't use Bondo because you'll want to put it on too thick and then it'll crack because over 1/8 of an inch thick, usually Bondo will start to crack after a while. So. Okay, so we've been working on a couple of these areas. This is the first one. It's pretty smooth here. We had to put 2 coats, this one right here being the third, just a little pinch area. Block sanded it with a Durablock, and that was starting out. Then I had a couple what I kind of call potholes that look like little low areas that are kind of drastic here and up here. Refilled it again, and then you do a lot of cross hatch this way, cross hatch that way, and go across. Kind of sweep across it fast enough you feel any irregularities in it. And it's a little low, so I'll probably have to use the longer block on it. The one I was using was about this wide. So you can see if you hit in here, it'll dig into it and come out and then dig into it again. So I'll probably put another little skim coat after I smooth this bit down. And you can use the long block and do crosshatch this way, since we have this drip rail here. Crosshatch that way, and I can go this way, but make sure that it stays staggered over top of this side and this side. That way it'll flatten it out. The body work just takes a lot of patience. Don't try to do with it what you think it needs to do. Just keep going like a robot on it. This has a double coat here. I smoothed it all down, and then there's a second coat on that. It's got a little bit of a weirdness because there's the lead seam here, so it kind of lumps up and then goes down. Well, that kept digging out, so I went ahead and filled it a little heavier right here and then tapered it out. So we'll work on those. And over here I just put a fresh coat on this spot right here. It was really low here and here, so I went all the way across it, and we'll have this spot here. The only other one is kind of over there, just a little dimple that was kind of like a little kiss in the metal. I just stuck some in there and sanded it down. And then we got this piece here, just where the seam is. That's really all that is. So we'll block these out. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. And here's the small block we're using. I think it's okay to use one of these as long as not so much on this one, because see, it goes beyond the area. So if you do this, it's gonna dig. It's gonna start digging you out. Then when you go to paint it and prime it, it'll have a little dip right there. So we'll use our longer block, which is this one right here. We also have one of these if we need it, but we don't need that now. And just using some 80 grit. I need to get some proper 80 grit adhesive. You can buy it in a roll to where it's actually just as wide as this. You can rip it off the length you need. You get quite a bit of it. It lasts a pretty good while. So I need to get that. I think a Norton brand is what it is. I'll check. Need to get a roll of that, and we can really burn a lot of this body work up. But this is the start of it right here. This is the start of the nightmare, which is body work. It's not my favorite thing to do. It's very time consuming, very go back and do it again type of job. And that's just the nature of it. You got to go back and redo what you've already redone and 4 or 5 times until you get it right. But we'll get this roof done, and then we'll move the body panels and do it that way. So we're getting ready to paint the roof of the van, right? I did what we had to do left on the filler work, which was about 7 coats on one of the spots and about 3 coats on the other ones. And got it sanded down, blown off, let all the dust settle for a couple hours, and then wiped everything down, did a little touch up, put some primer on it, on the spot primer, and that's on the areas where we sanded through and all that kind of stuff. Other than that, ready to paint it. So